welcome to lesson 11. We're talking about integers, which are negative and positive numbers. They are shown with a positive or a negative sign. Integers are always compared to zero. So we always have zero on the number line and we compare everything to zero in the middle. So the ones that go to the left of zero are the negative numbers. As you go to the left, the number gets smaller. As you move to the right, the number gets bigger. So anywhere after the decimal, we're going to be getting smaller numbers. Negatives are smaller numbers as well. So it says you can put them on a number line, either horizontally or vertically. So here we have a horizontal. Whoopsie, that's still in highlighter form. Oh boy. Look at how thick that line is. I don't know. I'm going to have to change the thickness of my line. There we go. So this is a horizontal number line. Then we get to look at vertical number lines. So horizontals go left to right. On the right, we get larger numbers. And on the left, we get smaller numbers. Okay, I'll use the number sign. So as we go left, they get smaller. As we go right, they get bigger. Okay? Says a negative sign is shown to indicate negative numbers. Now, what if they show it to us on a vertical? So here's a vertical line. When they show it to us like this, we can compare it to a building. So the ground level would be zero. So zero is ground level, okay? Anything below ground is going to be negative. Okay, and anything above ground is going to be positive. Okay, so zero is always ground level. In buildings, what floor number do they always skip? Which number do they not put on in your elevator? What number do they like to skip? Because they think it's very unlucky.
69.
There's usually not buildings with 69 floors.
21.
If I had a building that had 20 floors, they've actually skipped a number. Which number do they skip?
7.
That's always unlucky. What's an unlucky number? 13. So I don't know, 13 is considered an unlucky number. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a fact to be true, but all I know is in buildings, they tend to skip the number 13. So you might notice it'll say floor 12, and then it'll go 14, 15, 16. It'll skip 13. Okay, so pay attention next time you're in a building. Now, turn your page, please. We're going to talk about how do we use integers and when. Well, we can see it on a thermometer like this morning, for example. This morning when I got up and drove to work, it was minus 18 degrees with the wind chill. So WC is wind chill. So it was about minus 10 out this morning. Now, this afternoon, it'll be rising to about 5 degrees Celsius above zero. So again, zero is going to be considered zero is freezing when we consider temperatures. So zero is freezing. Okay, that's our freezing. Now, when do we also use them in sports? So one example is golf. So if we have a +2, we're talking about how many strokes above par you are. They can consider par 0. And then par is not 0, but par would be considered if it takes 70 strokes to finish a course, that would be par. It's a par 70 course. Well, if you hit 70, you hit par. So anything above that 70 would be above par. That means you needed extra strokes, so you're not as good of a golfer. If you're under par with the negatives, you're a better golfer because it takes you less strokes or less swings to get to the hole for your ball. So that's how that's represented. We also do it with depth and elevation. So we talk about it with sea level. We compare everything to sea level. So sea level would be considered 0. And then the mountains are above sea level. So as we go, and we checked our altitudes. So in Red Deer, so Red Deer would be down here. I drive to work, Red Deer's down here. I go up a little bit of a hill. Sylvan Lake is right here. Now, if you continue going out to Rocky Mountain House, as you drive, you're also going to go uphill. So we notice that Rocky Mountain House has a higher elevation. How come? Because we're starting to get into the foothills of the mountains. So Red Deer is in a valley. Okay, we are lower elevation, whereas Sylvan Lake is a little bit higher elevation. And then Rocky Mountain House is even a little bit higher. So we could take a look at it as stairs in a building. And that's how we would look at it. Okay, so we're comparing to sea level. Everything is always compared to sea level being 0. Then we talk money. Money is the other situation. So when you put money in the bank, it's a plus. When you take money out of the bank, it's a negative. So if we deposit, deposits are positive. Okay, so deposits are positive. Withdrawals, if you want to withdraw from your account, withdraws are negatives. That means you're taking money out of your bank account. Okay, so your withdrawals can show up as negative. Okay, they show, and that's called debits. So this is called debits. And then it's called credits. So your deposits are called credit. That's what you have positive to your name. And the stuff that you take out, that's why they call it a debit card. Because when you go and you use your tap on a debit card, it's subtracting money out of your bank account. That's what's going on. So a debit card is subtracting money from your bank. Okay? So we're just going to write that down to remind us. So debit cards subtract money from our bank accounts. Now, what if it was a credit card? Everything you put on a credit card is considered a debit. It's all considered, you're putting it on credit, which means you don't have the money now, you're going to pay it later. So what happens is they stack up all of the charges, and then that's all the negatives they need to take out of your account. They stack it up and say, all right, at the end of the month, you owe me this much money. Okay, that's how credit cards work. And if you don't pay it all to them, they charge you interest. All right, and this is how we talk about money on the next page. So it says when money is earned, like we see, we use positive signs. When money is spent, we subtract it. It is a negative sign. It comes out of our bank account. And these are the words. This is the vocabulary that we need to be aware of. So when we earn money, that means we make money. Okay, earning means we make money. We make money. So it's going in our bank account. So the minute I work at my job today, I'm making money into my bank account. Okay, if you go mow a lawn, you are making money. Okay, every time you babysit, you're making money. All right, spent money, you're also going to see it as all these words: a loss, below, minus, decrease, less. Every single one of those means it's going down. So the money in your bank account, if you had $100 and you used your debit card all day and you're buying things, it's going to show the money decreasing and going down in your account. And then what happens when you run out of money?
No buying me.
You can't buy anything. That's right. You run out of money. Your bank account is empty. All right. We have Claire. Had a busy week. She received her weekly allowance of $15. She got a haircut of $10. Then she went babysitting and made $22. And she got $90 for her birthday. And then she bought a jacket for $30. We want to see what are the gains and losses in her account. So all of the things that she has to pay for, the things that she has to pay for are the haircut and the jacket. Everything else is positive money. So what we do is we add and subtract as we go down the list. So we're going to find out how much money she has left over. So we're going to say Claire has blank money left over. We want to find out how much money she has left over in her account. So we're going to do exactly what it shows up here on our calculators. So I'm just going to switch to my calculator and show you what that's going to look like. So I go to my calculator, and now I'm going to take the numbers and I'm going to add them. So I've got $15 to start with. Cleared out. Okay, I got $15 to start with. Then I have to subtract my $10 haircut. Then we have to add our babysitting money, $22. Then we have to add our birthday money of $90. Then we have to subtract our jacket of $30. Okay, so we would put it left to right in our calculator exactly as you see it. So that's what it would look like. And now we're going to hit enter and solve it. So that's $87. That's how much she would have left over in her bank account. All righty, so Claire has $87 left over. Now we're going to compare numbers using number lines. So if we take a look at a number line, we want to find out if the number is getting bigger or if the number is getting smaller. So it says compare -2 and +4. What they're asking for is how many steps are between them. So how many steps between them? So we start at the left and we count to the right. So watch what I'm going to do with my little pencil here. So I'm going to start at -2 and I'm going to go 1 step to the -1, 2 steps. So it's 2 steps away from 0, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it is 6 steps between them. So if I say, what is the difference between -2 and 4? The word difference is subtracting. So if I said, what is 4 subtract -2? I get 6 steps. Okay, so that's 4 subtract -2. Now, which number is bigger? How do you know which number is bigger? Just by looking at the number line, how would you know which number is bigger? Yep.
Right to left.
That's right. So the guy that's on the right, the farthest one on the right, is bigger. So if I wanted to compare them, I would circle him or highlight him and say this guy is bigger because he's on the right. So he's a bigger number. And this guy is smaller. So how can I say that with symbols? They're showing us right here. They're saying -2 is less than +4. And that's how they would write it. -2 is less than +4. Okay? So this little symbol like this, it's like a kicked over little letter L. So it's like a letter L kicked over. So that's the less than. Okay? So you can make a letter L with your left hand. That's the less than sign. All right, turn your page, please. Now, what if we do it this way? Comparing with a thermometer, all it does is it changes to a vertical up-down instead of a left-right. That's all it does, is it's changing how we look at the numbers. So again, as we go further to the bottom, that's like we're sinking to the bottom of the water in the ocean, okay? So 0 would be water level. Anything below water is the negatives. So right here, if I said 0, that right there, what would that be? That would be the surface of the water. Anything below would be the below the water. Now, this one's talking about temperatures, though. So we're comparing -10 to +10. Well, we're going to notice that there's more shaded. So on the thermometer, there's more shading. That means it's a bigger number. Okay, so if you're going to the bottom, you're starting at the bottom, just like a song. Starting at the bottom, now we're here. Sorry. And then it goes up, and then it goes up, and then it goes up. Okay? So then it keeps going up and up and up. So on the next one, we start at the bottoms too, but we only go up 2 spaces. The other guy went up further. So we would say -10 is less than +10. Okay? Because he's lower down on the thermometer. The guys at the bottom are less. At the top is more. Okay, so the further they go in shade on the top, that's a bigger number. Okay, so more shading means it's a bigger number. All right, turn your page. Or actually, we're just sliding down the page. Okay, now we're going to talk about using grid paper. Grid paper is wonderful because it's got little squares. And that's what we use as a number line. So this is where we are using squares to create the number line. The number line. Okay, so all they're doing is using squares to create the number line. You find 0, put him in the middle, and then you plot your numbers left to right, and each one gets a box. Okay, so from one edge to the other edge of the box, that's going to be 1 space. So if I've got a grid like this, I would say if I start here, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces to get to here. So if that was the number 5, this would be the number 9, and there's 4 spaces between them. I would have to travel 4 places to get to the number 9. That's what the grid paper would be showing you. Okay, so it's a way to draw your number line. And then it's showing you anything further on the right is bigger. So just like we said, anything on the right of 0, it gets bigger as you go to the right. And as you go to the left, it gets smaller. The difficulty becomes when we're comparing negative numbers. That's what gets difficult. All right, turn your page, please. We can also put the grid paper straight up and down and use it up and down instead. But it's the exact same process. So we would place 0 and then we would compare the numbers. How far do they go? Now this one, you could think of climbing a ladder. So this would be very similar to climbing a ladder. Okay, same thing as climbing a ladder. So 0, there's my 0. You climb your ladder. How many steps up the ladder are you going? And then if you've got negatives, how far down the ladder are you going? Okay, so maybe it's a 2-story house and 0 is on the first floor. And if you're going to the basement, that's your negatives. Okay, so there's lots of ways to think of them. Now we're going to actually start about adding them. When we add them, we can use different methods. One way is a T-chart, and T-charts using manipulatives. So circles or squares or little objects, or you could draw hearts or diamonds or stars. And what we do is we move left to right, working our way up. So let's take a look. Here's our first example. We need to plot the first number. So I'm going to plot my first number, -3. So they're showing draw the line. So step 1. They've done it for us. They're showing step 1. Draw your number line. So we've got a number line. How do you know how far and big to make it? Well, if you've got the number +5, you know you're going to need to get at least that big. And if you've got a -3, you got to go at least as far as -3. So a good thing would be to -5 to +5. And that's what they drew here. Then it says locate the first number. So there's my -3. Then it says locate your second number. So it says move 5 spaces to the right. Why is it 5 spaces to the right? Because it is adding. The adding means you move to the right. Okay, if it's adding, you're moving to the right. If it is subtracting, which way are you going? Left. All right, so we move to the right 5 spaces and we see where we end up and we plot that number now. So I would plot the number on positive 2. So my answer is positive 2. Okay, so number lines and grid paper work very, very well. Another thing that works very well for integers are rulers. You can use a ruler to count with your integers up and down. And many kids like to use rulers. They use those in middle school, and rulers really help sometimes. So if that helps you, please use them. So take a look at B. They did B all together in one step. So they drew their number line. They located the first number. And then it says add -3. So you're going to be adding, okay, but I'm adding a negative. If you're adding a positive, you move to the right. When we add negatives, we move to the left. So we have to write that down. When we add negative numbers, you move left. Instead of moving right, you move left. So I'm adding -3, so I'm going to go 3 steps left. So I've got 1, 2, 3, and I end up at -5. So my answer for this one is -5. It's the answer where you end up. Okay, and that's if you add negative numbers. So letter C is the same way. We're going to add a negative. So if we're adding a negative, we're moving left down the line. So I locate my first number. I locate my first one. There he is. And now I'm adding, but it's negative. So I got to go left. So now I'm going to add 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. I end up at -2. And that's what they're showing us. Okay. So adding with number lines really helps if they're single digits. When you move into double digits and triple digits, that's when our calculators become handy. All right, letter D. We're adding a positive this time. So if we're going to add a positive number, which direction do I move? To the right. If I'm adding a positive number. So here we're adding a positive number. So I move to the right. All right, so I locate my first number. My first number is located. Now I'm going to add 3 steps. So I'm going to go 3 steps to the right. 1, 2, 3. Excellent. I end up at -2. Okay, and when we're comparing negative numbers, the one who's closer to 0 is always the bigger one. All right, we can also think about it as a hot air balloon. How high is the hot air balloon going and how low is the hot air balloon going? So they've got a number line here showing it with a number line and the hot air balloon. So they say -6 adding 4. So dude's at -6. He's got his hot air balloon, but you're adding. So if it's vertical, you're going to go up. If you were subtracting, you would move down. So we're going to add 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I end up on -2. So that means my answer is a -2. Okay? You got to wait, buddy. Okay, letter B. Turn your page. So this guy says,
Tissue?
I'm out. You'll have to use the bathroom, tissues in the bathroom. Unless,
I'll go see if there's some dog.
that'd be great. Okay. Miss Jamie's going to see if there's some in the office to bring back for you, okay? All right. So now I've got +5 and -7. So we're going to show this on the vertical number line. So whenever I'm adding a negative, we would move left if it's left and right. But this one, because it's up and down, we're going to move down, okay, because we're adding a negative. We got to move down. So if we take a look, we got our sandbags. We're at +5, and now we have to move down 7 steps. Well, if I'm going down 7, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We end up on -2. So now we know that that's the solution to our question. If it was a left-right number line, left and right, we would have +5 over here, and we would be moving left 7 spaces left. Okay, and that's how we would find our number if it was horizontal. All right, turn your page. What about using manipulatives and a T-chart? So we need to use a T-chart now. So when we use T-charts, we're going to use little round circles. So a shaded one, this is shaded, and then we've got the white circle. So white ones are going to be the negatives. The whites are the negative ones, and the shaded ones are the positive ones. Okay, so now here I've got, if I'm starting at +1, this is 1 plus a -1. Well, if it's a -1, I'm moving left 1 step. So I move left 1 step and I end up at 0. Okay, so 1 and a -1, they end up at 0. You can also locate them and see where they are. Where they are in relation to each other, they are right, 0 is in between them. Now, what if we place them on a T-chart? Let's see what it would look like on the next page. So the negatives go on the left, the positives go on the right. So on the next page, they're showing us what to do with these little objects. And you could see a quiz that has this on there. So you need to know what to do with those. I've seen the PAT, your final exam. I've seen them have diagrams like this, and you have to know what to do with those diagrams. That's why these booklets are a bit thicker, because they have lots of pictures. So with this kind of diagram, just like a number line, if this is 0, all the negatives are on the left, all the positives are on the right. So we put all the ones that we have 4 negatives. So 4 negatives means I have 4 white circles. Here I've got +7 circles. Okay? And now what they're going to do is they're going to remove, when you've got the same color, they're going to remove them, because -1 plus 1 makes 0. So this is called 0 pairs. Whenever you've got a positive and a negative on either side, you're going to remove them. Okay, so you're going to remove 0 pairs. So if they've got something on both sides, it goes away. So now I would cross these out, gone, 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 gone. And then you circle your leftovers. So my leftovers, I've got 3 left over, and your leftovers are the answer. Okay, leftovers are the answer. They explain it to you in the steps, but I'm just giving you the brief form of how it works. Okay, if I'm not there with you and you're writing and you're working on this stuff, you should be able to figure it out with the steps they show you. Let's try this one. What about if there's no color on the other side and there's just a whole bunch on one side? Well, that just means you add them all up on that side. You would group them together as one set. So I've got nothing on this side to get rid of or cross things out. So that means this whole part right here is my answer. So this is the answer, because it is the leftovers. There's nothing to cross out, so it would be considered the leftovers. Okay, it is the answer because nothing crosses out. So nothing crosses off and disappears. Okay, which means everything is the leftovers that you add together. So you add all the leftovers together. There we go. We add all those guys together. Now we're going to look at a couple more examples of that. So here's an example they gave us, and it's -1 adding 3. So I've got 1 on the left, 3 on the right, and as we can see, one of them crosses off. So these ones are going to disappear. Okay, the ones that cross off disappear. And these guys are my leftovers. And the leftovers are the answer. So my leftover answer is +2. Okay, shaded is positive. Now we can do it even quicker in our calculators. You just have to know which button is the negative button. So the negative button is like this in most calculators. So locate your negative button and make sure you know where it is. It is not the subtraction button. Okay, so the subtraction button is a different color than the negative button. The negative button on these calculators is white, it's not blue, and it's right beside the equal sign. Okay, so it's usually white, and it's not the subtract sign. Okay, so it's not the subtract sign. It's a white one, and it's beside the equals, usually. Beside the equals sign. Okay, so it's beside the equal sign, and you're looking for the negative. And the negative button, it'll be a button that looks like that with a negative in brackets. Brackets, yeah. Okay. So let's see what steps they would take on the calculator. So they would take -13, they're hitting that negative button, and then they're adding +32. So again, all you're doing is using the button on the calculator. Do you need to put a positive sign in when you're talking about positive numbers?
Yeah.
No.
On paper, yeah.
On paper, yes. But in the calculator, no. You only need to hit the plus sign once, not twice. Okay? You hit it once, not twice. Even though you see 2 of them, you're only going to hit it once. All right, so it's telling you what to enter on there, and then it gives you your final answer. Calculator method 2. There's 2 different methods depending on the calculator you've got. So you can read those accordingly. We're going to go through the shortcuts. We only have a couple things to talk about next. It's just the shortcuts. So adding integer shortcuts. So different multiple ways to do it. What if you've got numbers that are bigger than other numbers? You need to recognize where they are on the number line. So with different signs, when you're adding them, different signs in the middle between 2 numbers always mean subtract. So 2 signs between numbers not the same, just means subtract. So you're going to notice what they've done here is they've taken the plus and the subtract sign and just changed it to a subtract sign. That's all they've done. Now, can you put it in the calculator the same way? Yes, I could. In the calculator, I could put in 5 plus -2, and it'll still spit out the same answer that I want. Okay, so you can do that in your calculator, and it'll give you +3. You can put the plus and negative, but it's easier to just go subtract 2. So whenever you've got the signs in the middle that are different, it just means subtracting. Whenever you've got the signs in the middle that are identical, it always means adding. So that means, just like the next one, here we have with the same signs. What if we have 2 negative numbers? Well, you're just adding negatives. So you're adding the numbers and they're getting further negative. They're going away from 0. That's all that's happening. So you can think of them, because they're both negative, you know you're going to get a negative answer. So what they're saying is drop the negatives because you know your answer is negative. Just add the digits, put the negative sign back on in the end. And that's what they're showing here. So drop the negatives to begin with and then put your answer as negative. Whoopsie, thought it was highlighting. Your answer is negative in the end, put the negative sign on. Okay, so it's saying ignore them first, add the digit, and then put the negative on your answer. And then you do the proof. If you wanted to prove it or the question gave you a blank number line and said prove this answer, you would start at the first number, your -1, and then you would add -3. But remember, when you're adding a negative, we're moving left when we add negative numbers. All right, subtracting again using the calculator. This is where you've got same signs in between. This is what I was talking about. When you have two signs the same between numbers, it means adding. So you can change it to adding if you want, or do subtract a negative. So in your calculator, you would have subtract the -26. That's what you would type in. You would have -12. You'd type the negative button. So you would type negative, then the 12, then the subtract button, then the negative button, then the 26, and then the equals button. That's how you would solve that. 26, and then the equals button. Each one of those are buttons, okay? But when the signs are identical in the middle, all it means is adding. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about here. So when the signs are the same, so two signs, it has to be two of them right in the middle. So two signs are the same between two numbers. Between two numbers means adding. So you could also stick it in the calculator as -12 plus 26 equals, and you'll get the exact same answer. So whenever you've got two identical signs in the middle, you can change them to pluses, and they would both turn to plus. Calculator method 2. If there are different signs, yes, you need to type each button. So you're going to type each button as you see it. And it's going left to right. So in my calculator on this one, I would type bracket -10, subtract 14. If it's positive, you don't need to put the plus sign. But if you wanted to, you could. You could put plus 14, that's fine, equals. The only reason the 14 has a bracket around it is to separate it from that subtract sign. It's to say that it's not a -14, it's a subtracting 14. And that's how you would type it in. And you will get the exact same answer of -24. All right, here's another example. This one here is showing us subtracting. This one again has the two same signs in the middle. Two identical signs in the middle, like we said before, is the same thing as adding. So this is like saying 16 plus +4 to give me 20. These two signs will change to pluses when they're identical between two numbers. Okay? So identical between two numbers means you're adding. All right, what if they're talking temperatures? Nothing changes. You use the same rules. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the temperature outside and we're adding and subtracting numbers, or if we're talking about sea level, or if we're talking about elevation. We're still adding or subtracting numbers. That's all we're talking about. So when we add and subtract numbers, they're either going to go up and down the number line, either left for negative, right for positive. But what if we have to multiply negatives and positives? There is a rule. So let's see what happens when we multiply them. Do you guys remember what happens when you multiply them? Anybody remember? What happens when I take a negative times a positive? What kind of answer would I get? Does anybody remember? Not quite? Well, let's refresh you. So a positive integer means add groups. A negative means remove groups. So if I have a 2 times a 6, that means I've got 2 groups of 6. Okay, and that's what they're telling us, 2 groups of 6. So you could just add them up together now. You'd get 12, or you could multiply them on the calculator. You would say 2 times 6. That's what 2 groups of 6 means. Okay, turn the page. This one is now showing you're multiplying by a negative. All they did was make the circles white, because white circles mean they're negative. So now we've got 3 groups of negatives. Well, we're just going to add up all those negatives. I have 6 white circles. That's how I get -6. The negative means the circles are white. Now, all of these can be done in our calculators. Here we've got a negative timesing by a positive. What happens if we have a negative timesing by a positive? What happens? Anybody remember? Take a look at this one. Negative times a positive, what kind of answer did we get? We got a negative answer. So anytime you multiply numbers that are different signs, so a positive and a negative will always multiply or divide to give you a negative. If the signs are identical, they will always multiply to give you a positive. Doesn't matter if it's 2 negatives or 2 positives. They always multiply to give you a positive. So that's what we're going to write down right here at the bottom of this page. We're going to say a positive times a negative equals a negative. A positive times a positive gives us a positive. A negative times a negative gives us a positive.
If you have taken no other notes today because you just think, wow, I got this all, these notes are important. Write these down.
Yep, these ones matter right here.
A million times.
So this little dot here means timesing. So if I times them, if I've got different symbols, a plus and a negative, always giving me a negative. But if the symbols are identical, 2 pluses or 2 negatives, you're always going to get a negative answer. So that's what we need to remember. So that little chart is super important to remember. And that's what we're going to do on the top of page 18. I'm only going to bore you for a little while longer. There's lots of pictures. Lots of pictures. Okay, top of the next page. If we're using pencil and paper, this is what they're telling us. Okay, those are the rules we just wrote down. So if the signs are the same, they give you positive answers. If the signs are different, they give you negative answers. And take a look at this part right here. Does it matter if the negative comes first or if the negative comes second? Does it matter? No, the answer is still negative. So it doesn't matter if your negative number is first or second, okay? You're always going to get a negative if the signs are different, okay? So that's something we got to remember. Okay, I got to unzoom this guy. Back to this. Okay. So we're going to see a couple examples here. So the first thing we're going to do, all we're going to do is identify the signs. So I've got negative times a negative. 2 negatives give me a positive answer. The signs are identical. Okay, when the signs are identical, it's always a positive. The next one, I have 2 pluses, no negatives at all. I'm always getting a positive. Look at the next 2 examples. One of them is negative. I've got a negative right here, and he's written first. On the next question, I have 2 negatives. So if I've got 1 negative, my answer is negative. And it doesn't matter if the number is written first or second. However, if you look at the next question, they have identical signs. They're both negative. Both negatives give us a positive answer. So identical signs, positive answer. Different signs, negative answer. All right, turn your page. Multiplying using a calculator. Again, this is just going to be typing in the buttons. You have to realize what buttons to push. So on this one, your buttons would be the negative sign of 15, so 1, 5, your times sign, and your 3. The only reason they've got this guy in brackets with a plus sign is to show you that he's a different sign than a negative. That's all they're showing. But we never have to write those plus signs, okay? So now I've got 1 negative sign, 1 negative sign. My signs are different, 1 negative, 1 positive. My answer has to be a negative answer. It's got to be because I only have 1 negative. And we're going to get a negative 5 or 45. So they're showing us they get negative 45. Turn your page. Aren't you glad you don't have to write all these notes? Because could you imagine having to write all this stuff? At least it's written for us, and we just got to highlight and circle certain things. All right. What do you think the answer of this one's going to be? We have 2 negatives. What do you think? Identical signs mean what? Come on. Identical signs. What do you think? Caleb, any thoughts? Identical signs. Yep. What kind of answer are they going to give me? Negative or positive? You betcha. So identical signs are going to give me a positive answer. So since I already know that, do I even need to put the negatives in the calculator if I know it's going to end up positive? No. Don't confuse yourself by putting all the negatives in unless you have to. So in my calculator, I would ignore the negatives because I know I'm getting a positive. I would just go 6 times 12 equals. I know my answer is positive, so I can ignore those negatives. Same thing with the next example. Count the number of negatives. How many negative signs do you see? 1. If I've got 1 negative, the signs are different, my answer will be negative. And if you know your answer is negative, do you have to put the negative sign in? No. In my calculator, I would do this. I would go 20 times 4 equals, and then I would put a negative in my answer. I would say my answer needs a negative sign, and then what's the answer to 4 times 20? It's 80. So I know my answer is going to be negative. I stick it on there, but I don't need to confuse my steps on the calculator with all the negatives. Is it lagging? Okay, just give me a sec here.